Venus in the fifth house, joy and creative delight. Welcome to Venus in the fifth house in synastry. In this overlay, we explore what happens when one person's Venus falls into another person's fifth house, the house of creativity, romance, self-expression, play, and the particular joy of being alive. This is one of the most celebrated overlays in synastry, and not without reason. It carries a quality of romance in its most classical sense, not romance as obligation or performance, but romance as genuine delight in another person's existence. It sparkles. And yet, like all things Venus touches, it is worth understanding clearly. The fifth house governs what we create, how we play, what thrills us, and how we express the most vibrant parts of ourselves. It is the house of the lover, the artist, and the child who has not forgotten how to be enchanted. When Venus falls here, those qualities are lit up. The house person feels more alive, more creative, more playful in the Venus person's company. But as with all synastry overlays, the quality of that illumination depends on the Venus being brought. A Venus in dignity, in Taurus, Libra, or Pisces, arrives in the fifth house with ease and abundance, amplifying joy without distortion. A Venus in detriment or fall, in Aries, Scorpio, or Virgo, still brings warmth, but may also bring volatility, intensity, or a tendency to critique the very joy it is trying to offer. And an unaspected Venus, operating without the moderating influence of other planets, can produce a quality of romantic fixation, a delight so concentrated it occasionally tips into overwhelming. Understanding the Venus you are working with shapes everything about how this overlay unfolds. From the Venus person's perspective, the house person is endlessly enjoyable. There is something about the house person's energy, their creativity, their warmth, their particular way of having fun, that the Venus person genuinely relishes. This is not merely attraction, though attraction is often present. It is closer to delight. The Venus person may find themselves looking forward to the house person's company in a way that feels almost effortless. Not because the relationship demands nothing, but because being in the house person's expressive presence requires so little pretense. From the house person's perspective, the Venus person makes joy more available. The house person may find that they are freer, more spontaneous, more willing to create or play when the Venus person is near. Inhibitions soften. The serious weight of adult life lightens. There is a quality of permission, as though the Venus person's presence says, "This, here, is what life is for." At its most beautiful, this overlay produces what can only be called a romance. Not the complicated, transformative romance of Venus in the eighth house, but the lighter, more luminous kind. The courtship, the laughter, the sense of being chosen and delighted in. Dates feel like adventures. Ordinary moments acquire a glow. This is the overlay of the love affair in its purest expression. Creativity also benefits enormously here. The Venus person often inspires the house person to create, to write, to paint, to perform, to pursue whatever form of expression feels most alive. There is something about being witnessed with genuine appreciation that unlocks the creative self, and the Venus person in the fifth house tends to offer exactly that. The house person's output, whether it is art, storytelling, music, or simply the way they move through the world, is received by the Venus person as something genuinely beautiful. That quality of being truly appreciated for one's expressive self is not as common as it should be, and when it is present, it is among the most sustaining gifts a relationship can offer. There are, however, dimensions to hold with care. The fifth house governs romance and pleasure, but it does not necessarily govern commitment. What lives here is the beginning of love, the courtship energy, the spark. Whether that spark deepens into something more enduring depends on other factors in the chart. There is also the possibility of remaining in perpetual courtship mode, always playful, always light, never quite willing to move into the more serious chambers of the relationship. When both people are comfortable here and the deeper needs of the chart are met elsewhere, this can be a joyful equilibrium. But if one person needs more gravity than this overlay provides, tension can arise. The fifth house is not designed for difficulty. It tends to root around it. And while that capacity for lightness is a gift, it can also become a form of avoidance, a beautiful room that both people prefer to a necessary conversation happening elsewhere. The Venus person may also, in their genuine delight, project a romantic ideal onto the house person, falling in love with the house person's expressive, joyful self, while being less prepared for the quieter, more complicated version that also exists. The fifth house shows the person at play. It does not show the whole person. In long-term relationships, this gap between the celebrated self and the full self eventually asks to be closed. And how the Venus person responds to the house person's less luminous dimensions will determine whether this overlay remains a foundation or simply a beginning. At its highest expression, this overlay brings genuine joy, creative inspiration, and romantic warmth to a relationship. It reminds both people that love, in its early light, is one of life's great gifts, and that maintaining some of that lightness across time is not naivety, but an act of care. The capacity to keep finding each other delightful, to keep choosing play, to keep showing up to the relationship with some portion of that original spark. This is what Venus in the fifth house, at its most evolved, teaches. When balanced, Venus in the fifth house creates romance, creative inspiration, playfulness, and a sustained sense of delight in one another. When imbalanced, it can remain at the level of courtship, bright but rootless, or lovely but without the depth that sustains. At its core, this overlay is about joy, the particular, irreplaceable joy of being with someone who makes you feel more alive, and the quiet, important work of choosing to protect that joy, even as the relationship grows into something larger than its own beginning.
This was Venus in the fifth house in Synastry Overlays. Thank you for listening. Next, Venus in the sixth house.